Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the good, bad, and the ugly of contracting. And again, I want to thank everybody for joining us this morning. Today, we have people coming from Southern California, San Jose, and the Bay Area. So I think we have a distinguished panel. This panel is all about us, the panel being truthful about the things and the issues that companies are facing and things that they don't have in place that they see. So the individuals today have worked extensively with businesses, whether it's from the certification standpoint, whether it's from the contracting standpoint, whether it's from the recruiting, supplier diversity standpoint. So I'm glad to have the three individuals that we have today. I do want to introduce them. The first one is William Dickerson, who is manager of programs and contracts at Southern California Edison. William currently works for Southern Cal Edison since October 2009 as manager of programs and contracts, managing major construction contracts totaling over $5 billion for Southern California. And a lot of our suppliers that we have out there, as you know, William, are in construction, right? So I know a lot of them deal with you. And then we have Jose Gabriel Espinoza, who is the interim procurement manager over at California Water Service. Jose is no stranger to the chamber and to our members out there. He's been very active with us in years past and currently. He serves as the interim project manager, and he manages the procure to pay operations and leads the data-driven processes for improvements. But Jose has worked with us extensively on supplier development, supplier diversity, and working with making sure our suppliers were qualified and competitive to work with California Water Service. And then finally, I've got a good friend, Cecil Plummer. Cecil is president and CEO of the Western Regional Minority Supplier Development Council, WRMSDC, one of the 23 regional affiliates of the National Minority Supplier Development Council. And he works to create jobs and wealth for people of color by supporting and promoting minority-owned businesses and connecting them with contract opportunities with Fortune 100 companies and large public entities. And my friend Cecil there is a very knowledgeable person when it comes to contracting and what some of these corporations are looking for. But more importantly, as one of the certifying agencies out there, I think he's an important individual that all of our members need to know and feed off his knowledge. And he's always, and all three of these gentlemen are always willing to share their knowledge. So we'll get started. So, when we talk about the good, bad, and the ugly of contracting, there's so much going on out there, right? A lot of people just think because I get certified, I get a contract. That can be furthest from the truth. But there's a lot of things of not just being certified, not just being qualified, but being competitive to win a bid. And as I say, it's just not one piece of a pie, right? It's the whole pie that our businesses have to have. But one of the things we see is that so many of them are still missing that final slice of the pie, right? And hopefully these three gentlemen can shed light on what is that a lot of our businesses are missing. What is it that they have to do more to be competitive, but more importantly, to win the contract, right? So let me start with Cecil and talk a little bit more about what you see as what some of the companies are missing out there, and as you're working on certifying them and getting them, because you guys also do a lot of technical assistance. I mean, a lot of people look at your organization as just someone who certifies, but we've partnered and you've had programs that help them to win that contract. So Cecil, what are some of the things that you still see that businesses lack, or maybe when they go into this concept of being able to contract with corporate America, one thing that they don't realize that they have to have in place?
Well, there's a couple of things that immediately come to mind, and one is just the difficulty business owners have balancing ringing the cash register every month with their ongoing learning and development. We know that organizations that invest in robust learning and development outperform their peers. And taking time away from the business to work on yourselves and your team and participating in those development programs is key. When it comes to what the corporations say that they are missing, oftentimes it starts with the RFP process. We have corporations that are begging us, and we'll be doing this in 2021, please, more how to respond to RFPs, the errors and the omissions and the lackluster RFPs that we see coming in really puts diverse businesses at a disadvantage in the contracting process. And so having robust learning and processes internally as an entrepreneur about how you're going to respond to RFPs and make sure that your responses are thorough and error-free is a critical part. So I'll stop there. I think the other part is, well, I don't want to stop there. That's getting into the contracting. But when it comes to winning the contracts, I think capacity is an issue that people really don't address directly. And people like to say, hey, I've known my craft. I've been doing this for 30 years. I did this for 30 years in corporate America. But at the same time, again, if you don't have the right process and procedures, if you don't have your team trained and have redundancies in place, I mean, a lot of companies are one car accident away from losing all of their intellectual property in the CEO or the founder of that company. So really having the capacity to do business, both financially and being able to wait for those payments to come in, but still do the work, but also just to show that you have the infrastructure to have business continuity, to guarantee that that product or service gets delivered, even if the CEO gets sick or has to take some time off, are some of the critical things that corporations are still struggling with.
Thank you. And before I move on to our next panelist, I do want to let the audience know that you can send in your questions on the Q&A function there, and we'll get them, and we'll try to answer all the questions that we get. But I want to move to Jose. Jose, you've been there from recruiting these diverse businesses to training programs through California Water Service. I'd like to see your perspective of what you guys see from California Water Services point of view of what are these businesses really missing? I mean, we do so much training out there, but what are they missing, and why doesn't a business sometimes get a contract when they think they should?
Julian, we're always sourcing for diverse suppliers for different projects that we have. And perhaps the biggest challenge that I face is that I cannot find enough information on their website. And by that, I mean their past experience, their accomplishments, their certifications that might be industry specific. Sometimes it is a challenge because we're looking for certain specifications for our projects. For example, when it comes to tank coating, we need to have some certifications for the inspectors. And if we're not able to find that information on your website and the urgency that we have to complete these projects kind of compels us to look at your competition and to move fast because we need those projects to be online. So my biggest challenge is around that. I always make an analogy of applying to a job without a resume. And just as you wouldn't do that, it is important that you take some time and develop your website and include some information about your qualifications, your past experience, your key personnel, because that will help us identify you as a viable competitor for an RFP.
Great. And over to William at Southern Cal Edison. William, you manage, what is it, $5 billion in construction contracts. So I'm sure you see a lot of suppliers and potential suppliers coming through. And from Southern Cal, and Southern Cal Edison, just like other corporations, commit a lot to preparing suppliers. But when they finally get to you to bid, what are they still missing? I mean, like I said, we want to be honest. I mean, what are some of these businesses not getting? What are they not putting in their bids? What is it that they need?
So Cecil brought up a couple of good points in how a contractor responds to a request for proposal. Typically, a lot of smaller contractors think price is the deciding factor, but in most cases at Southern California Edison, we award based on best value. Technical response to an RFP is just as important as a price because we want to ensure the contractor understands the project, that they will be able to execute the project, and that they know how to anticipate all unforeseen conditions that may come up to ensure the project is completed on time. Another area I see, and I see this firsthand, is understanding the contract requirements. Where a lot of small businesses fail is unable to meet the insurance requirements some of the large companies have. For example, Southern California Edison, for smaller projects, our insurance requirements are $2 million per occurrence and $4 million on the aggregate, 2 and 4. That's typically on the smaller projects. But on the larger projects, sometimes our insurance requirements meets a minimum of like $25 million as an umbrella insurance. And these are very, very important contract clauses in the agreement that we must meet. I have found and shared with several small businesses, sometimes if you don't have the contract requirements or if you can't meet them, you may want to partner with another contractor and enter the contract as a joint venture to help you obtain more insurance, more financial strength to win some of these contracts. So these are some of the minimum requirements that Southern California Edison looks for, because if we can't meet the requirements in the agreement, there's no way a contractor will get a contract. So having your back office support, understanding the requirements and the clauses in the agreement, such as cyber or limitations of liability, becomes very important to us.
So I want to touch on a couple of things that all of you have pointed out, right? And I think we had this discussion when we were just meeting about this session, is that as I said the other day, it's about a whole enchilada, right? It's not just parts of it, right? And you guys all mentioned all these different parts that I think are, in some aspect, some of our businesses are missing. Cecil, you talked about the lack to respond to RFP or knowing how to respond to an RFP. Luis, you talked about their websites lacking the information so you can verify things. And again, William, you talked on a number of points, but especially on insurance, and their capacity to do the contract. Cecil, let's talk about a little bit about what you guys are doing as an organization to help our businesses meet some of those needs, and maybe what you see as we put all these programs out there, right? The three of you, your companies, we put these programs out there, and it's like sometimes it's like pulling teeth to get businesses to understand you need to be in this session, right? You need to make the time. So, Cecil, I think I wanted you to touch a little bit about the importance of certification. How should they certify? Is there a strategic plan that they should have in regards to certification? Which certifications, how to proceed to it. So I'll go to you, Cecil.
Okay, great. Before we move on, but I think it's still relevant in terms of one of the things we don't see with business owners is I want to talk about their differentiator, their value add. William talked about total value or best value versus best price. And what we see a lot of times and what corporations struggle with is folks coming up with, they have a passion for their business. They say, hey, this is what I want to do. Does anybody want to buy it from me? Or hey, the organization A, Edison's buying a lot of this. Well, buy some from me too. But not really providing a compelling reason to engage with your particular business. So I think that's important. When it comes to certification and how to use your certification, it's a lot like a gym membership, right? It's like you can get the best platinum gym membership. I can go any time of the day. I can go all over the country, but if you don't show up and do the work, you go, why aren't I losing any weight? I paid, and I kind of hear that with certification. I've been certified for 5 years. And sometimes I have this conversation with someone who says, I've been, why are you dropping your certification? I've been, certified for 5 years and I haven't got any contracts. And it's like, well, we have events all the time. I don't think I've ever met you or seen you. I don't even know who you are. So it's that kind of thing. So showing up is very, very important. So I think minority entrepreneurs need to have a strategy when they get certified. It's like, what do you want to do with this certification? So first you got to get certified. That's like having a law degree or passing your medical exams. It's getting in the door, right? But then once you get in the door, you have to have a strategy. Have you done your homework? Which companies are you uniquely qualified to serve? Do you understand what their problems are, and are you bringing them solutions? And here's the hard part when it comes to certification. Certification is great because companies are looking for you. That certification and that guarantee that you are who you say you are, that this is a minority-owned business or a woman-owned business, and you're not being manipulated to just look like one, that's very important, and that can help you get in the door. But then once you get in that door, you have to have a strategy to solve your problems. Whether it's Edison or Pacific Gas and Electric or the water company, they're not in business to give suppliers revenue, right? That's not what they're there for. The reason they have a supply chain is because they need suppliers who can help them achieve their objectives. So when minority business owners who are certified have that mindset, then that can also attach to the development programs, right? It's like, if I understand what my client needs, then I can understand what my value proposition is. And that's a lot of the development programs that we offer. It allows minority businesses to assess your capabilities, identify gaps, fill those gaps. And sometimes those gaps are things like, long-term strategy, disaster recovery plans, succession planning, right? Succession planning. I mean, a lot of times, organizations like Edison or the water companies will invest in these minority-owned businesses only to have them bought out by a majority firm later. And so making sure that you have succession plans and that you're thinking more about the customer. And I think we've got some great examples out in our world of large organizations who've figured this out. Disney, Apple, right? They've got customers beating their door down because they understand what the customer wants and they're delivering that. With us as entrepreneurs, if we can understand what our customers want, they'll be beating our doors down. But I think too often we take this approach of, I'm going to get a certification and I want my customer to help me grow my business, when you should really be helping your customer grow their business and meet those objectives. And then your growth is simply a derivative of you providing a valuable service to your clients. And that's why certification is important, because you get access to world-class education. I mean, free, somebody's paying the bill, but free, from Ernst & Young and PwC and major universities, free world-class education. And that's, in many cases, only available to certified businesses. So I hope that answers your question.
No, I think you open up the door to many more. So, but no, I think your points are well taken, and I think Jose, you've worked hard to get these businesses in the door, right? Okay, you're certified. Let's see if we can do some business, right? And I guess guide me through but as you get them in, I mean, and you guys did your latest report at the en banc at the CPUC, and you guys are improving your numbers, right? And the water industry as a whole as well. You guys have been working hard over the years to do that. So why don't you tell us a little bit about what you guys saw as deficits within these businesses that you guys have done to help increase those numbers? Because that's remarkable. I mean, people like Southern Cal Edison have, of course, been working at it. They improve their numbers every year, but especially the water company. What have you guys been doing with these businesses? And because obviously you've identified something they lacked previously to do business with you, and identified it and improved upon it so you can do a contract with them. So can you expand on that?
You're right. It does take like an additional effort, if you will. Yesterday, in fact, I had a 1-hour conversation with a minority-owned new electrical contractor that we're doing an onboarding for. And what I can tell you, we spent an hour talking about the jargon that we use. For example, we refer to cities as districts. And what does that mean for him? And the term, for example, Cal Water Standard. And what does that mean for him when he's submitting the bids? The culture of safety that we have, but also our procurement policy and how it is likely to apply to him being a diverse supplier. Also our terms and conditions and the importance of him not only looking at them on his own, but also having his legal advisor look at them to understand the contracting agreement that he's going to sign. And these are important steps that we can take in advance of any purchase orders being issued to avoid any delays on getting the work done. Also, the importance of insurance and why is it critical for us that we have it available and in compliance at all times. But very important is how do you get paid? What do you need to submit in your invoices? When do you submit them? Where do you submit them? And actually a little bit of the background of how our system works and why is it that we are requesting certain information such as the purchase order. So these extra steps are part of that onboarding process that we take, and it's just setting them up for success. What I told him is that my role is to support him as a new minority-owned contractor and support my electrical engineering team to eliminate a conversation on insurance, on W-9s, on terms and conditions, legal paperwork, so that you can actually talk about generators, panel boards, and conduits. So it just goes to show the extra steps that similarly the water companies take, we take, but also my colleagues in energy and telco.
You know, Jose, you bring up an interesting point, and I think Cecil kind of segued into it about, you know, our businesses need to know their customer, right? And now you've kind of expanded on that, saying not only knowing the customer, you need to know our processes, right? And how we do things to be successful, be competitive, and get that bid. So over to William now, because a little bit more about those processes that a company needs to know. I mean, I know there's some similarities between water and the IOUs, the utilities, the energy companies. But I know with Edison, it's even a little bit more complicated. But one of the things I want you to maybe even expand on, I've always told businesses that they have to understand the rate case when it comes to electric companies, right? And how that impacts your knowledge or your ability to do contracting with the utilities, right? Not knowing how, knowing how that rate case is going to affect you and everything else. So maybe a little bit more there and talk about, again, some of the things that you're seeing when these guys come in. And, you guys have developed some wonderful suppliers who, maybe would have never been able to do business with utilities. You guys have worked with them, and now they're doing business with utilities and with other members of Cecil's organization, et cetera. So,
Right.
a little bit more on that, and how you guys have been blunt with some of these businesses, and sometimes you got to tell them you just can't do it, right?
Well, I think you bring up some very good points. In reference to the rate case, Southern California Edison submits a rate case every 3 years. And that pretty much determines our spend for the company. And it also determines what projects will be executed in those 3 years. In reference to a lot of the small businesses, like I have a success story I can tell you. We have a grading contractor who wanted to do business with Southern California Edison, but wasn't ready yet to really, I'll say, jump up into the big leagues. So we had a conversation with the contractor, and I suggested that he become a subcontractor first. So he understands the process, understands how Edison works, and understands and get a chance to make a name for himself and build a relationship in the company so he can receive a RFP. Well, he took my recommendation, and he was a subcontractor for a few years, and finally he started to win awards. Well, Edison issued some pretty large contracts at times, but he started to win the $20 million contract, the $5 million contract, and he did several of those for about 5 years. I am pleased to tell you, 4 years ago, this same contractor who started as a subcontractor, who who worked his way up, building relationships, performed excellent where the internal contract managers knew who he was, received a $150 million contract for a major construction project. Again, it took him a few years to get there, but he took the recommendation, and that's very, very important. We brought up payment terms. That issue came up. What a lot of the small businesses need to understand, and this is where they make a major mistake, in my opinion. SCE has standard payment terms, but in the agreement, everything is negotiable. So if your company cannot live with net 60 payment terms, net 90 payment terms, negotiate. That's why you have an agreement, to negotiate the terms instead of just accepting the terms. So that's a key element that small businesses should consider. You know, a lot of them are just so happy to be participating, to get an RFP, to go through the clarification process, but they forget about the smaller things that can hurt them later, such as payment terms. And that becomes very, very important in contracting.
William, thank you. You know, you bring up some great points. I think you guys all have. You know, this is all about being, having tenacity, perseverance, and having patience, right? And then you hit on the payment terms. Once you get the contract, it's not over there, right? You still have to work and make sure that contract works for you at the end of the day, because as you know, we've had issues where we've had people say, hey, on-time payment by the utilities, right? And I'm glad to say on here, we did that study, and utilities had 98% payment rate. Okay, and I think we all agreed, well, 2% is still a lot of money, but 98% is pretty damn good. So when that was happening, right, we were starting to do a lot of programs, I think Jose and Southern Cal Edison, saying, okay, let's get you guys to understand the payment terms, that you can negotiate it. You signed those terms already. But here's what I had, what I want to know is, from the three of you, what would you tell this business owner? We were doing these sessions, and the guy said, well, I don't have time to sit through a session and understand how I need to do the billing, right? So a lot of billing now for you guys all is technology based, right? Online, et cetera. He just said, I don't have time to sit through a session to learn how to get paid, promptly, how to do prompt pay. What would you say to that business? Honestly, what would you say?
Oh, I can tell you, if I would jump in, I was like, you don't have time. But what if you never get paid? It's like, one of the first things I want to know is how I'm going to get paid. To use Jose's example, where would you go get a job and not talk about salary and when payday is? It's one of those, it's one of the first things when you're onboarded that you find out. But seriously, these issues are serious, and I understand. An entrepreneur. I've been a minority entrepreneur, and gone through programs like the ones we're talking about. And I understand not having the feeling you don't have time to do it, but really you don't have time not to do it. And that's why you need to build out your team and your infrastructure, whether that's, full-time employees, part-time, or if you patronize another MBE, to get those services done. Somebody in your organization needs to understand things like that. And you need to take the time to develop that business. And the other thing I said is Jose brought up something else, and so did William, touched on it, about the relationships. Part of what goes on with minority-owned businesses quite often is that you need to understand the difference between sales and business development. Sales is ringing that cash register because we all have to pay the bills, but it's also very, very transactional. Right, and it's about price and speed, and that extra value add is in there. Business development often takes a very long time, but it can be infinitely more lucrative. And you can see in the larger organizations, they have those different. They've got their telemarketers, marketers that are dialing for dollars, and then they got their national account managers who are working on the more significant thing. And so, allocating time to not only understand how processes work with these potential customers, but also to develop the relationship, and not just when there's a sale happening, right? I mean, these contracts are 2 to 3 years before they come up for bid the next time or before the next project. And that's your time to invest in and develop the relationship so you can become a potential trusted supplier. But if you only come around when there's an RFP or a project, you're inherently at a disadvantage. So I would say, I understand the temptation to say, I don't have time, but I think you better find time or else your competition is going to eat your lunch.
Yeah. William, what would you say to that guy that says, I just don't have time to go to that session to learn this so I can get paid? And that was a true comment. I really have to tell you, it was a true comment. I was kind of like shocked forward when they said that.
Well, that would concern me very much, and that would only tell me that that their processes and procedures may need to be looked at a little closer, because payment is critical to a business surviving. We find from time to time when the payment terms are missed, and we get 6 months into a project, and the company cannot finance the project as they thought they could. We do our due diligence to make sure that the company is financially stable based on the award amount that's being issued to him. But if you are not able to pay your subcontractors or to pay your employees on time, I think your company would be in trouble. And another thing that small businesses should consider is their payment terms with their subcontractors. Because if we have net 60 or net 90 payment terms, and your payment terms are net 60 or net 90, you're going to fall behind paying your subcontractors, which is going to eventually affect your business, which you would eventually get a phone call from someone like me saying, can you, the project is falling behind, can you give me a recovery plan? And it just leads to bigger problems later down the line if someone doesn't have time to address these issues up front.
Jose, what would you say to him?
I think time is a great equalizer. Whether you work in corporate or you're a small business owner, we all have 24 hours. And it might be a valid point that where do I focus my time on? A little bit of research into the description of the sessions, a little bit of research on the companies, research on the speakers can help you determine the value that you're going to get from any session. But here's another thing. You might ignore it now while it is important. But down the line, as William said, it's going to become urgent. And then you will have time to ignore it. So rather than take a proactive approach to these type of issues.
So there was a comment that Cecil made that has generated a question for us, right? And that was about the relationship business development part of it. And the person's question is really what they're asking is, so what is, and we have a session later today on developing a relationship, but I think since we have the three of you on, what is it that you think develops a good relationship with you and what turns you off, right? Because oftentimes you get a business that's very aggressive, right? But for you guys, and Cecil, I think, because you've done a lot of training and technical assistance and you've been a business owner yourself, what's the secret of getting that right balance? So I don't know who wants to go first. Yeah. Hold on, Cecil, we lost your audio.
Sorry. I'm going to say something very controversial right now.
Go on,
but I say this all the time. Let me tell you, nobody likes salespeople. I don't like salespeople. I don't like being sold to, right? And I don't like selling. And in my role, I still have to sell, believe it or not. Julian knows that, right? What I do like is winning and being successful with people that I trust, I like, and that I respect their capabilities. That's what I like doing. And so when it comes to this relationship piece, I think too often I'm going to be a little bit repetitive. Our focus is, how do I get my business to grow? Nobody cares about that but you, right? But when you learn about what your customer needs and you can become a value partner, and that takes time. That has to be invested time, not just when there's an RFP coming out. That's a time. Some of my most successful entrepreneurs, I mean, these are people who spend all kinds of time with their clients or potential clients, just learning about their business, learning what's coming next, learning what direction their business is going. So to Jose's point, it's about empathy. I had an opportunity to sit down with one of the senior technology executives at Visa, and they did lots of internal studies. And you know what they found? They found that the number one attribute of a top performer is empathy. Empathy. Do you care? Do you care what's happening to William or Jose at their organizations? Are their jobs on the line? Are they going to be furloughed? Is the company cutting back? Is the company growing? Is the company expanding? You know, some of these people call me and say, like, some of these people that we're trying to get appointments with, some of them have cancer. Some of them have loved ones who have cancer. I get these calls all the time. Hey, so-and-so is not calling me back. Right. Like you're the center of their universe. You're not the center of their universe. Right. And so it's about empathy, which is a code word for, do you really care about your customer and what your customer needs? Because if you do, you will invest the time, just like you do with your children, just like you do with your significant others and your loved ones. When you care, you put the time in. And so the real question is, do you really care, or do you just want to duke it out on price with everybody else? And that's a key attribute of what makes success. You know, we've been able to revitalize our organization over the last 5 years. And the first thing I did was visit every client and just say, tell me where it hurts. Let me understand what your pain points are and give it to me straight. And that allowed us to develop our strategy, which I think, Jose's been ringside for this, right? To see the transformation in our organization over the last 5 years. But my team and we all lead with empathy, because at the end of the day, it's not about us. It's not about the council. It's about our clients and the communities we serve. And when you understand that, you can make a difference, and people will want to do business with you.
Yeah. That's why I like Cecil so much. We kind of think alike. So on that same concept, Cecil, I always ingrain that into our staff. But
sorry, I got a little hot. But business, that's business development, right? I mean, business development is: do you even know if somebody is mourning the death of a significant loved one, and do you even care while you're trying to say, "Hey, can I get in on this deal?" Right? So we have to develop those relationships that allow you to get in. And sometimes a chief procurement officer will call me and say, you know what, I'm in a rush. I don't have time to go through the database. Give me 3 people I can trust to include in this RFP.
Yeah.
And if I don't know you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Jose, what do you see as the balance for that, developing that relationship so you don't end up turning the guy off? I think these businesses, last thing I tell them, you don't want to turn off a Jose or William. I mean, they're pretty fair people, but at the same time, they're busy schedules, right? So, because I know both you and William get people that call you constantly, as Cecil and I do, right? So, what is the balance, and how do businesses need to approach that?
Julian, you're right. I looked at my inbox this morning and I have 1,000 unread messages. So it is impossible. What I would say, I think of the word value. And by that I mean, what value do you bring with your outreach, with your touch point? If you are sending an email and then send the same email again, and then send it for a 3rd time, I mean, isn't that the definition of insanity? Doing the same thing and expecting a different response. And by that, I mean, maybe do some research. Our organizations are on social media. We tell the world what is important to us and what challenges we're facing, and maybe customize your value proposition around that, because in the end, we need to solve a problem. And if you can be part of the solution, now I can uncheck you from those 1,000 unread emails.
William, what do you see as the balance?
Well, it's pretty tough coming behind these 2 gentlemen because they covered a whole lot. But for me, I think it's understanding who you're speaking to and their availability. For example, if you want to reach out to me and I schedule an appointment with you, it's very critical that first of all that you make the appointment and that you be on time because time is very valuable to us. But it is very important to reach out to your contact, but not be more so someone who bugs them because no one likes to be bugged. But again, as you start to build this relationship, and the gentleman talked about it prior to me, is understanding what's going on with that individual, what's going on in the individual's organization, and most of all, how can you help? These few items really makes a difference, and most of all, just like Cecil said, showing that you care. If you only talk to me about RFP or how you can get business, our conversation may be very short. But if you can show some type of empathy to show that you care, that you understand the business, that you're here to help, and when we do call on you, that you step up and do everything possible to help us out. I think those are some of the key things.
Yeah. So a question that we're getting is we can't do this stuff in person. We don't have the handshaking, but the question is how important is attendance at events such as Cecil does, such as we're doing today, when they're in person? William, how important is it that a business show up at that? Southern Cal Edison does a lot of the EDGE programming, right? That's usually in person. How important is it for a business to have representatives at those sessions? I think not just to gain the knowledge, but at least to also be seen, like Cecil said. We get calls from you guys sometimes to say, hey, I just need 3 guys to bid on this. And we go, I don't know you, but I know these 3, right? So how important are those events?
I believe the events are critical. Face recognition is very important, especially when you're entering into these contracts. For example, I have a story I can share with you. I attend a lot of events, and typically when I attend, I'm kind of quiet because as soon as they find out I work for SCE and on my role, everyone swarms over me. But there's this one lady I could think of. I would see her at all the events, and I introduced myself a few times, and I met her. But she finally figured out my role at Edison, and this happened over about a 6-month period. And at one event, she said, I've been watching you over the last 6 months, and I figured out your actual role at Edison. And we have developed this relationship, and now she's actually competing in a very large RFP for project management work. And so, attending the events is critical because if we may not have a chance to speak to you, but if we see you and we see you again, we know that you're active. We know that you're heavily involved and you care about your business. So we want to do everything we can to help you, but it is critical that you attend the events.
Yeah. And right, you're right, William. Once they figure out you control that $5 billion in construction contracts, right? The contractors are lining up with you at the bar there, right? But I know, Jose, you attend a lot of events. You just as William and Southern Cal Edison representatives, but you and I always bump into each other at our events. You've been at our events, but again, and you're a very, very approachable person. Again, how important is it for them not just to attend these social events, but these technical assistance programs and these, like I said, the EDGE programs? You guys do an annual event as well with the water companies. How important is that attendance and being seen?
It is critical. People like doing business with people they like. It is true. And if we constantly see you and our relationship evolves beyond trying to conduct a sale to an actual great dynamic, you need to keep in mind that contracts are cyclical. They tend to be between 3 years to 5 years. And while we might not have an opportunity now, but the fact that I have seen you at events, The fact that you're involved with the chamber, volunteering, maybe sitting on a committee, creates that dynamic between us, and by that I mean our representatives, so that when an opportunity comes in that contracting cycle, then we have you fresh in mind. And that is an excellent way to break through. But with the understanding that contracts can take 3 to 5 years. So it is not a short-term investment that you're making, but rather a mid to long term, which in the end, it does pay off.
I left Cecil to the end here because I know he'd be passionate about this subject, but my friend, again, from winning the contract and procurement, you and I preach it all the time, right? We do events all the time, but in all seriousness, how important is it that these people attend these events? We create opportunities for them to be seen. Like you said, if I don't know you, I don't know you, right? Who are you, right? So, Cecil, what are your comments on this question?
Well, yeah, and I think you need to, because I talk too much. So that's why you need to leave me to last. But it's what William said. It's absolutely critical for a number of reasons, and let me kind of break it down for everyone. And I think Jose and William have given us some good comments already. But Jose tipped it off. Remember, 1,000 emails. Right. And that doesn't count the phone calls and the text. Right. And no disrespect to Jose. And he's working for one of the smaller organizations. Right. And there's Hispanic businesses and Black businesses and LGBT and women owned, thousands of people trying to get to him. Right. If he took all those calls and meetings, he couldn't do his job, which his job is really not to meet one-on-one with MBEs. Really, his job is to navigate that huge organizations and get decision makers to make opportunities available to diverse business owners. That's what the job is. And so this time that professionals like Jose and William set aside to be at these events and to get to know you is critical, because when they get back to the office, they've got to do that hard work of finding opportunities for you. So leveraging that time is extremely important, because everybody wants a one-on-one meeting, but that's extremely efficient and frankly just not doable for most professionals, whether it's a buyer or a supplier diversity professional. That's their time. The other thing you can do with those events is get visibility for your company. Volunteer, moderate a panel, sit on a panel, even get involved with the coordination of the event, where you can get exposure and people can get to know you. Are you the kind of person that does what you say you're going to do and fulfills the tasks? And when the task gets done, does it get done well? Volunteer with organizations like the California Hispanic Chamber of Commerce or WRMSDC or whatever, right? Because then you get to work side by side with people like Jose and William. But getting back to the events are absolutely critical. The development programs are absolutely critical. Guess who sponsors the development programs in most cases? If it's not the water companies or California Water or Edison, it's the corporations, the very corporations that you're looking to do business with. And in our organization, and I think it's probably similar to other programs, at the end of that program, guess what you get to do? You get introduced. You get to present your capabilities to a group of individuals who are in the position to give you contracting opportunities. And you don't get that if you don't go. And so, that's kind of the way I'll round it up, is I like the party scenario. Like people like organizations like NMSDC and the Hispanic Chamber, right? It's our job to throw the party and make sure there's lots of attractive prospects there for you, right? But you've got to show up looking good, smelling good, and you got to have some moves. You got to know your business, be able to articulate your value proposition, and you have to be able to build those relationships. But if you don't come to the party, you can never meet that contact. And that's why, whether it's virtual or in person, you've got to go there. And William really made a good point, and so did Jose. And it's not just a one-time thing. I met you once, now let's do business. And I'm going to quote a supplier diversity professional many of you may know, Kenyatta Lewis of MGM Resorts International. She says, come to the events and meet us. But she says, here's the deal. With MGM, we're risk averse. Most procurement organizations are. So we don't kiss on the first date. We don't kiss on the second date, and probably not on the third date. But when we get around to it, it's going to be good. So those contract opportunities are out there for you, but it's unrealistic to expect a corporation who does not know you to take a risk on you after just meeting, or maybe just based on, what you've written on paper. Relationships count.
Yeah. Well, I want to wrap this up, but I think I do want to thank you guys. Well, first of all, on your note, Cecil, I always tell people in regards to partnerships, I like to date, right? And someone told me, so you're telling me this other person I was telling them I like to date, and they go, so you're telling me I'm a one night stand? I said, whatever it may be, right? But you're right? It's developing a long-term partnership from the get-go, right? And putting that in place. But, I really want to thank all three of you for being honest and sharing. I think, some of the points we hit on is, lack of understanding what they need to do in the RFP, right? Making sure they have the capacity. William made a great point. You may not want to be the prime. You may be the second tier. What does it matter? You're still making money, right? At the end of the day, right? And I think really the discussion we had on developing that relationship was important for people to know, as well as knowing the company as they go in. I know a lot of our vendors go in and they don't understand the company. They don't understand that industry that's out there, and they need to. And every company is different, right? What Jose talks to you about over at the water company is not what William will talk to you over at Southern Cal Edison, or what PG&E will talk to you when it's a similar contract, right? Everybody's different. And I think that's, again, where individuals, especially like Cecil and his organization, come in, are just important to have around, as well as our organization, the state chamber. So anyway, guys, I thank you, because I know you guys have all been on for even an extra half hour before this for us to get prepped. But, thank you guys for being honest. As I understand that, we can't really be real blunt, because, we work for, you guys work for major corporations, but I think you guys were pretty honest, and I appreciate that. And I think our viewers appreciate that, right? And Cecil, always thank you for your insights and your honesty. And I think your point about empathy and understanding and caring needs to be an important part of your business strategy, right? As these businesses move forward in the procurement area. But again, thank you, everybody. Thank you for attending. I know these individuals. I mean, Jose has 1,000 emails already, so don't email him, please. But anyway, but we're always happy. I mean, they're not strangers to our organization or to Cecil's organization in participating in these events. So anytime you can, get to see these guys and meet them or hear what they have to say, they're always willing to share knowledge. All three of them. So again, thank you guys for attending, and to our viewers and our attendees. I hope you enjoyed this session, and hopefully you'll join the rest of the sessions. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.